It began with a contract that was supposed to change everything. The WNBA and its commissioner unveiled a historic $50 million offer, a number so large it sent shockwaves through sports media. This wasn't just another paycheck. It was a statement. The league paraded it like a trophy, bragging about how it proved their commitment to their star. But then came the twist. Caitlin Clark didn't sign. She didn't celebrate. She rejected it outright. The silence after her refusal wasn't relief, it was panic. Because in that moment, she flipped the power dynamic upside down. For decades, players begged for more pay, better treatment, and consistent respect. The league always held the cards, dangling scraps of progress as if they were gifts. But suddenly, Caitlin Clark had a choice, and she said no. No to the biggest payday in WNBA history. No to being bought into silence. No to being locked into a system that repeatedly failed her. It wasn't just a rejection of money. It was a rejection of authority. The commissioner's shiny lifeline turned into a humiliation broadcast across the sports world. The context makes this decision even more dramatic. The league believed they could solve every problem with a dollar sign. They thought a flashy number would erase years of mismanagement and silence critics. But Caitlin Clark wasn't fooled. She's lived through the chaos, endured the blows, and seen firsthand how the WNBA protects its image while failing its players. A paycheck doesn't erase bruises. It doesn't fix broken trust. And it doesn't hide the reality fans have already noticed. Her rejection wasn't stubbornness. It was survival. She chose principle over profit, and that choice set off an earthquake. The commissioner expected headlines praising a breakthrough. Instead, the headlines mocked desperation. Clark turns down $50 million, became less about Caitlin's refusal and more about the league's crumbling credibility. Imagine being the WNBA executive who thought this would solve everything, only to watch it explode into chaos. What was meant to bind Caitlin to their narrative instead revealed the truth. She doesn't need them as much as they need her. And that's a terrifying reality for a league already clinging to her star power to keep the lights on. Because let's be clear, Caitlin Clark didn't just reject a contract. She rejected the illusion that the WNBA had control. By walking away, she proved that leverage isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in influence. And Caitlin's influence stretches far beyond any court, any scoreboard, or any commissioner's office. She turned down $50 million, and in doing so, she forced everyone to confront an uncomfortable question. If the brightest star doesn't trust the league with her future, why should anyone else? That single refusal ignited a scandal too big for the WNBA to contain. The story becomes even darker when you peel back the layers of mismanagement that led to this moment. For years, the league has been accused of mishandling its product. From inconsistent officiating to embarrassing travel conditions, the WNBA has struggled to present itself as a polished professional league. Caitlin Clark's rise exposed those cracks in the foundation. Instead of fixing them, executives lean on her star power to distract fans from the dysfunction. But that strategy only works if the star plays along. By rejecting their lifeline, Caitlin ripped the curtain off everything the league wanted to hide. Fans have not forgotten the countless nights when Caitlin absorbed cheap shots while referees swallowed their whistles. They remember the commentary downplaying injuries as just part of the game. They recall the moments of racial and political tension that overshadowed her impact. Every scandal, every misstep, every dismissal of her safety piled up until this offer landed on her desk. The $50 million wasn't just a paycheck. It was a bribe to ignore the league's sins and smile for the cameras. And Caitlin's refusal wasn't just defiance. It was accountability delivered with devastating precision. Think about how insulting the offer looks in context. Where was this money when players were forced to fly commercial flights between back-to-back games? Where was this urgency when fans begged for officiating reforms to protect stars? Where was this commitment when Caitlin herself was battered on national television without consequences for the offenders? Suddenly, when a league's survival is at stake, they find $50 million. That's not progress, that's desperation. And Caitlin Clark saw it for what it was. The league thought they were buying loyalty. Instead, they exposed their own weakness. The rejection of the offer forces everyone to ask an uncomfortable question. What does the WNBA stand for? If its brightest star doesn't believe in its promises, how can anyone trust leadership? Caitlin Clark's no wasn't just a private decision. It was a public indictment. It said out loud what fans have been whispering for years. The league cannot be trusted. Executives thought they could patch a sinking ship with a golden contract. Instead, Caitlin punctured the hull, making sure everyone could see the water rushing in. She didn't sink the ship, they did. And now, the league's failures aren't whispered, they're broadcast. Instead of celebrating an unprecedented contract, sports media dissected the dysfunction. Instead of praising leadership, analysts ridiculed their short-sightedness. And instead of silencing Caitlin Clark, the offer amplified her voice louder than ever. In rejecting $50 million, she didn't just protect herself. She exposed the WNBA strategy for what it was: survival, not support. And the world is finally paying attention. The scandal has taken on a life of its own, pulling in casual fans, enraging loyal ones, and leaving the league scrambling to rewrite a narrative it can't control. But perhaps the most glaring reason for Clark's rejection lies in what she's endured on the court. From the moment she stepped into the WNBA, she became a target. Opponents didn't just defend her, they attacked her. Every game seemed to feature a new controversy, a new cheap shot, a new moment of silence from referees. Fans could see it, broadcasters could see it, and Caitlin, lying bruised on hardwood, could see it too. Yet the league did nothing. No suspensions, no fines, no accountability. And now they expect her to trust them with her future? Take Bria's cheap shot, brushed off as just physical play. Sophie Cunningham's linebacker-style hit, excused. Lexi Hull's collision that nearly sidelined Clark, written off as part of the game. These weren't isolated incidents. They formed a pattern, a disturbing one. It wasn't just contact, it was negligence. The league failed to protect its most valuable asset. Fans filled arenas to see Clark, only to watch her thrown around like a rag doll. And when officials ignored it, they weren't just failing Caitlin, they were failing the sport itself. That silence was louder than any paycheck could ever be. Imagine being Caitlin Clark. You're the reason ticket sales surge, jerseys sell out, and TV ratings skyrocket. Yet every time you take the floor, you're treated as expendable. Every foul ignored is a reminder that the league values the revenue you generate more than your safety. That's not basketball, that's exploitation. And the fans know it. They don't just watch the games. They rewind the clips, they post them on social media, and they demand answers. And when no answers come, the outrage builds. The league thought money could erase that outrage. Clark's rejection proved otherwise. The $50 million wasn't an act of generosity. It was an attempt to silence her. But silence isn't possible when the evidence is everywhere. Videos of her being hacked circulate online after every game. Fans debate whether it's incompetence, bias, or something more sinister. Commentators whisper about favoritism and double standards. And through it all, Caitlin Clark continues to play, continues to endure, and continues to draw more fans to the league than anyone else. Her rejection wasn't just about the money. It was about refusing to be complicit in a system that endangers her every night. That's why her decision resonated so deeply. It wasn't just personal, it was symbolic. By turning down the contract, Caitlin sent a message. She won't be bought into silence. She won't accept money as a substitute for accountability. She won't let her name be tied to a league that refuses to protect her. Fans saw that. They felt it. And they knew it was bigger than one player. It was about all the players who had been mistreated, ignored, or silenced. Caitlin Clark's rejection became their voice, echoing louder than any highlight reel could ever achieve. The chaos didn't stop with on-court mistreatment. It extended into the league's politics. Caitlin's rapid rise brought out the worst in some corners of the WNBA. Instead of uniting around her impact, certain players and media voices used her success to stoke division. Brittany's shade and the racial undertones surrounding Clark's popularity painted her not as a savior of the league, but as a problem. Instead of celebrating the surge in ticket sales and national attention, the narrative became toxic. And Caitlin, who never asked for the spotlight, suddenly became the center of hostility she didn't create. These tensions revealed something ugly. The league wasn't prepared for success. Caitlin Clark didn't force herself into the spotlight. Her performance demanded it. Yet instead of embracing that momentum, parts of the WNBA tried to undermine her. It wasn't about basketball anymore. It was about politics, jealousy, and resentment. And the league did nothing to stop it. They allowed the narrative to fracture along lines that had nothing to do with the game. For Caitlin, the $50 million wasn't a reward. It was an attempt to paper over wounds that were never healed, wounds she never caused. Imagine the pressure being framed as both the league's savior and its villain at the same time. On one hand, you're the reason arenas sell out. On the other, you're accused of stealing attention, of benefiting unfairly from media coverage, of being the reason others are overlooked. That's not an environment, It's a battlefield. Caitlin Clark walked into that battlefield every day, surrounded by whispers and resentment. And now, with the contract, the league wanted her to double down on it. They wanted her to endorse the dysfunction with her signature. Instead, she walked away. Fans didn't just see the politics. They felt them. They noticed the double standards in coverage, the hostility in interviews, and the coded language in commentary. It wasn't just about fouls on the court. It was about the environment off it. Caitlin Clark wasn't just fighting opponents. She was fighting perception. And perception is a dangerous opponent. By rejecting the deal, she refused to let the league exploit her image as a distraction from the division. She wasn't going to be their shield against criticism. Instead, she turned the criticism back on them, forcing the truth into the light. That's why the politics matter. This wasn't just a contract dispute. It was a referendum on the league's culture. Caitlin Clark's decision wasn't about walking away from money. It was about walking away from a system that thrived on division. And in doing so, she exposed how unprepared the WNBA truly was. The commissioner thought she could buy unity with a check. Instead, Caitlin's rejection amplified the fractures for the entire world to see. The story wasn't about progress, it was about failure. And that failure, laid bare, now threatens the very stability of the league itself. And yet, what makes Caitlin's refusal so devastating for the WNBA is that she didn't need their money in the first place. Unlike most players, Clark isn't desperate for a paycheck. Her endorsements already eclipse anything the league could offer. Nike, Gatorade, Panini, Wilson, Stanley, the list goes on. She's not just an athlete, she's a brand. Every commercial, every billboard, every magazine cover adds to her empire. That independence makes her rejection even more powerful. Because when she says no, she's not losing security. She's gaining leverage. She's showing the league that its biggest check means nothing without credibility. The economics are undeniable. Caitlin Clark earns more off the court than most WNBA rosters combined. Her sneakers sell out in minutes. Her cups fly off store shelves. Her logo dominates social media. She doesn't need the league's hush money. If anything, the league needs her more than she needs them. That imbalance terrifies executives because it means they've lost control. It means the old power structure is dead. And it means Caitlin Clark isn't just a player anymore. She's a force, one with the ability to reshape the entire future of women's basketball. Consider what that means for the league's bargaining power. In the past, players had no choice but to accept what they were given. Now, Caitlin Clark has flipped the script. She can afford to walk away. She can afford to wait. She can even afford to pressure the league into reforms they've resisted for years. That's leverage no paycheck can buy. By rejecting $50 million, Caitlin didn't weaken her position. She strengthened it. She reminded everyone that power doesn't come from contracts. It comes from options. And Caitlin Clark has more options than the WNBA ever anticipated. Fans recognize this shift. They see Caitlin signing endorsement after endorsement, building an empire outside the league. They see the balance of power tilting toward the player, not the commissioner, and they cheer her for it. To them, rejecting $50 million isn't reckless. It's revolutionary. It's proof that athletes can bet on themselves and win. It's proof that influence is more valuable than a paycheck. And it's proof that Caitlin Clark isn't just making history on the court. She's rewriting the rules off it. That independence makes her untouchable, and the league knows it. And that's why the offer stung so badly. It wasn't just rejected. It was dismissed as unnecessary. For Caitlin Clark, $50 million wasn't life-changing. It was leverage, a reminder that the league couldn't survive without her. And she turned it down anyway. That rejection echoed louder than any buzzer beater. It wasn't about greed. It was about principle. It wasn't about money. It was about freedom. And in that moment, Caitlin Clark made it clear the WNBA cannot buy her loyalty. If they want her trust, they'll have to earn it. And that's a price they can't afford. But inside locker rooms across the league, the story played differently. Imagine being a veteran who's grinded for over a decade, scraping together modest salaries while carrying franchises through losing seasons. Suddenly, Caitlin Clark shows up, plays 2 seasons, and is offered $50 million. The resentment is inevitable. Whispers spread, tension builds, and the jealousy simmers. For some players, Clark's rejection may have been a relief. It avoided an outright civil war. But the fact that the offer was made at all revealed the commissioner's desperation. It exposed how fragile the league's unity already was behind closed doors. Veterans who fought for incremental raises now watched as Caitlin was offered more money than the league ever considered for them. That inequity doesn't vanish just because she said no. It lingers, poisoning locker rooms and fueling resentment. And the irony is brutal. By offering the deal, the commissioner created new divisions instead of solving old ones. Caitlin rejecting the contract didn't heal the rift. It exposed it. Because now, every player knows the truth. The league can pay big money when it wants to. It simply chose not to until Caitlin Clark forced their hand. This revelation sends shockwaves. Players who once accepted the status quo now question it. Why was the league willing to break precedent for Caitlin, but not for them? Why were they asked to wait, to be patient, to settle, when the money existed all along? These questions don't fade, they fester. And that festering creates chaos. By rejecting the contract, Caitlin didn't just defy the commissioner. She became the face of the imbalance. Veterans may resent her spotlight, but deep down, they know she exposed a truth they could never prove. The money was always there. Fans also notice the tension. They hear the whispers in post-game interviews, the veiled comments on social media, the frustration that leaks into on-court play. Every elbow thrown at Caitlin becomes symbolic, a manifestation of jealousy and resentment. The WNBA thought $50 million would silence criticism. Instead, it amplified it. Because now, the spotlight isn't just on Caitlin, it's on the entire league. Every player is forced to reckon with the reality that their loyalty was taken for granted while Caitlin's was courted with riches. And that reckoning will haunt the league long after the scandal fades. And yet, the most devastating part for the league is that Caitlin saw it coming. She knew the resentment. She knew the politics. She knew the danger of signing. And that's why she rejected it. By saying no, she didn't just save herself. She may have saved the league from an implosion. Imagine if she signed and every locker room turned hostile overnight. Imagine the fractures widening into open rebellion. Caitlin Clark avoided that disaster, but she left behind a reminder. The offer itself was proof of hypocrisy. And now, the league's dirty laundry is out for everyone to see. That's the brilliance of Caitlin's move. In rejecting the deal, she exposed the league from every angle. She exposed the commissioner's desperation. She exposed the referee's negligence. She exposed the veterans' resentment. And she exposed the fragility of the entire WNBA system. What was meant to be a historic celebration became a breaking news scandal. Every analyst, every commentator, every fan could see it. The league miscalculated. They underestimated Caitlin Clark. They thought she'd take the money, smile for the cameras, and play along. Instead, she blew up the script and wrote her own. Remember the Sophie Cunningham hit that fans still replay online? That wasn't just physical play. It was frustration boiling over. And the league's response? A shrug. No suspension, no serious fine, nothing. Fans saw it, and they were furious. Social media exploded with clips of Caitlin being hammered with no accountability. That moment became a turning point. Proof that officials weren't protecting her. And when you stack that alongside the Lexi Ho collision and Bria's foul, a disturbing pattern emerges. It's not just oversight, it's negligence. And Caitlin Clark knew signing a deal wouldn't change it. That's the detail most fans can't forget. Every game where Caitlin was targeted, every whistle that never blew, every shrug from the league office built the case. And when the $50 million offer came, it wasn't just rejected, it was ridiculed. Fans asked the obvious question: where was this energy when she was getting hacked every other game? The league's silence then made their offer now feel hollow. Caitlin didn't have to say it outright. Her rejection said it all. Money without accountability is worthless, and the league's credibility is running on fumes. The negligence is what truly terrifies fans, because if the league won't protect Caitlin Clark, who will?